The stars stretched endlessly across the black sky, each one shining like a tiny promise of unknown worlds. Captain Elias Varon leaned over the observation deck of the human starship Resolute, his eyes tracing the distant flickers of alien light. For decades, humanity had explored the galaxy, encountering civilizations both friendly and strange. But nothing in Elias' career had prepared him for the situation awaiting him in the outer sectors, a challenge that would test not only his intellect, but his understanding of honor and diplomacy. The order had come from the Interstellar Council, a body made up of humans and allied species who oversaw peace and trade among the stars. An alien fleet known for its strict hierarchy and rigid traditions had captured a peculiar prisoner, a queen from their empire cast out and shunned. The fleet intended to use her as a symbol, a weapon of humiliation. The aliens believed that by presenting a fallen ruler to humanity, they could shame humans, showing them how insignificant they were in the greater cosmic order. Elias, however, had a different perspective. As the Resolute approached the rendezvous point, the alien fleet came into view, massive ships gleaming under the light of a distant sun. Their design was elegant but intimidating, with long, sharp lines that suggested both grace and lethality. Docking with one of the smaller carrier vessels, Elias prepared himself for the meeting. He adjusted the cuffs of his uniform, straightened his posture, and reminded himself that this was not a mission of force. It was a mission of understanding. When he stepped onto the alien ship, the interior struck him immediately. It was both grand and cold, a palace of steel and light, adorned with holographic banners that told stories of conquests and fallen rulers. At the center of this display stood the queen, encased in a ceremonial restraint. Her posture was regal even in confinement, and her eyes, sharp and piercing, betrayed neither fear nor anger. She was alien, yes, but her intelligence shone clearly. To the aliens, she was a fallen symbol, yet to Elias, she seemed to carry a quiet dignity that demanded respect. The alien commanders, tall and imposing with their iridescent scales and sharp features, greeted Elias with what they believed was courtesy. Their words were formal, dripping with subtle derision. They spoke of the queen's failures, of her exile, and of humanity's supposed inferiority. Elias listened calmly, allowing the flow of alien arrogance to wash over him. He knew that their intentions were clear. They wanted him to feel small to accept their narrative. But Elias had never been one to accept appearances at face value. He stepped closer to the queen, maintaining eye contact. "I am Captain Elias Varon of the United Human Colonies," he said in the universal dialect. "I am here to understand, not to judge." His voice was steady, carrying a quiet authority that seemed to surprise both the aliens and the queen herself. There was a brief moment of silence, as if the ship itself had paused to witness the exchange. The queen's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of acknowledgement passing across her face. She did not speak immediately, but Elias sensed her awareness of his intent. Unlike the alien commanders who relied on fear and status, he approached her with genuine curiosity. He could feel the layers of exile and shame that surrounded her, but he also sensed untapped wisdom, strategic insight that had not been extinguished by her fall from power. Over the next several hours, Elias observed the queen carefully. The aliens had arranged a series of challenges, not physical but symbolic, to assert their superiority. They expected humans to fumble, to fail, and to prove their unworthiness. But Elias approached each scenario differently. He used logic, empathy, and creativity, finding solutions that were unconventional yet effective. The queen watched silently, her expression unreadable at first, then increasingly engaged. She began offering subtle advice, pointing out flaws in the alien setup, suggesting alternatives. Elias noticed that even in her constrained state, she was thinking several steps ahead, analyzing both the human and alien approaches with precision. During a pause in the proceedings, Elias finally addressed her directly. "I do not see you as fallen," he said gently. "I see someone who has been forced into a situation not of her choosing. I see a mind that is still sharp, a leader who still has much to offer. Why would I treat you as anything less than capable?" Then slowly she spoke, her voice low but steady. "You do not fear my presence and you do not seek to claim power over me. That is unusual among humans and almost unheard of among my people." Elias nodded. "Respect is not weakness," he replied, "nor is it a game. It is recognition of value where it exists, regardless of appearances." This subtle shift of perception unsettled the alien leadership, who prided themselves on rigid hierarchies and public humiliation as a tool of power. As the hours passed, Elias began to understand the depth of the queen's experience. She had once ruled vast territories, managed complex diplomatic relations, and navigated political intrigues that would have overwhelmed most leaders. Her exile had been the result of betrayal and misunderstanding, not failure. What the aliens perceived as weakness, Elias recognized as resilience. He began quietly consulting her on strategies, asking questions that revealed her analytical mind, her foresight, and her ability to anticipate the moves of others. In return, the queen began to trust him. She shared details of her empire's politics, the divisions that led to her exile, and the factions that threatened both stability and peace. Elias listened intently, absorbing information that would prove invaluable in the days to come. Through this exchange, he realized that the Queen's value was far greater than the aliens had imagined, and that humanity's ability to see potential where others saw shame could be a strength unmatched in the galaxy. As night fell over the alien fleet, Elias returned to the Resolute, carrying with him a sense of purpose. He knew that this mission would not be won through force, but through intelligence, patience, and respect. He would not allow the Queen to be a symbol of human inferiority. Instead, he would find a way to elevate her, and in doing so, demonstrate the unique qualities that made humanity exceptional. In the quiet of his quarters, Elias reflected on the events of the day. Humanity had long been underestimated by other civilizations, judged by appearances and assumed limitations. Yet time and again, humans had proven that creativity, empathy, and moral courage could overcome challenges that brute strength or rigid tradition could not. He smiled slightly, recognizing that this was not just about saving a queen from shame. It was about redefining how humans were seen across the stars. The queen's presence lingered in his thoughts. He imagined her not as a captive, but as a partner, a mind equal to his own. Together, they could navigate the complex politics of the alien empire, preventing conflict, fostering understanding, and perhaps even reshaping the galaxy's perception of what humans could achieve. Elias understood that his mission was only beginning. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with subtle maneuvers, careful dialogue, and the constant need to balance human ethics with alien expectations. Yet he felt confident. For the first time in his long career, he knew that he had found a challenge worthy of human ingenuity, and that through this challenge, humanity itself would rise. As the stars drifted past the viewport of the Resolute, Elias prepared for the days to come. He would face alien scrutiny, navigate their customs, and uncover hidden truths. And above all, he would ensure that the Queen, cast down by her own people, would be recognized not for her fall, but for her strength, wisdom, and potential. Humanity would not be shamed by her exile. Instead, through Elias' vision and determination, both humans and the fallen queen would rise, proving that respect, intelligence, and moral courage were the true measures of power in the galaxy. And so, with resolve steady in his heart, Captain Elias Varen began the first steps of a journey that would challenge perceptions, redefine alliances, and set the stage for a story where humans, and the beings they uplifted, would shine brighter than any star in the cosmos. The alien fleet hung in orbit around a small, rocky planet, its ships reflecting the faint light of a distant star. Captain Elias Varen stood once more on the deck of the Resolute, his gaze fixed on the carriers below. He had spent the past day observing the exiled queen, learning more about her abilities and the subtle intelligence that made her stand apart. But now, the real challenge began. The aliens intended to demonstrate their dominance publicly, showcasing her as a symbol of human inadequacy. Elias had to act carefully, balancing diplomacy with strategy, all while gaining the Queen's trust and showing humanity's worth. The next morning, he boarded the alien flagship, a massive structure of silver and cobalt with sweeping lines that gave it both elegance and authority. The alien commanders greeted him with the same formal disdain as before, their expressions unreadable but their intentions clear. They had arranged a grand ceremony in the main hall, a display of alien power designed to humiliate. The Queen was to be the centerpiece, a reminder of their control and of humanity's supposed weakness. Elias entered the hall, his calm presence contrasting with the tension in the room. The alien officials spoke in measured tones, describing the Queen's exile, her mistakes, and the reasons for her disgrace. They expected humans to falter, to accept their narrative without question. But Elias did not falter. He stood upright, listening carefully, then spoke with clarity and confidence. "I do not judge her for her past," he said. I am here to understand her, to learn from her experience, and to ensure that all parties are treated with respect. She noticed Elias' tone, his words, and the way he carried himself. Unlike others, he treated her as a capable being, not as a symbol of disgrace. For the first time in many cycles, she allowed herself a small measure of hope. The ceremony began. Aliens from various ranks watched intently as the queen was displayed in a ceremonial cage, a tradition meant to remind all observers of the consequences of failure. The air was thick with tension, but Elias remained calm. He noticed small details, the way the cage's locking mechanism worked, the subtle gestures of the alien officials, the silent communication between different factions. Each observation was a clue, a thread he could use to turn the situation in their favor. After the ceremonial formalities, Elias requested a private audience with the queen. The alien commanders hesitated but allowed it, assuming that any conversation would reveal human fear or confusion. Instead, Elias spoke with genuine interest. "I know your situation is difficult," he said. "But I see wisdom and potential. I want to learn from you. Can we speak freely? Without it, no alliance, no matter how strong, can endure." She spoke of her empire's factions, the tensions that threatened stability, and the subtle strategies required to navigate them. Elias listened, absorbing every detail, asking questions that revealed not only his curiosity, but his ability to think critically under pressure. Together, they began formulating small strategies to counter the alien fleet's attempts at public humiliation. Elias suggested subtle adjustments to the ceremonial procedures, using timing, gestures, and communication to shift perceptions. The queen, impressed by his ingenuity, offered her insights, helping him anticipate the reactions of the alien officials. Their collaboration was quiet but powerful, a meeting of human adaptability and alien wisdom. As the day wore on, Elias realized that the situation could become a turning point, not through force, but through perception. If he could demonstrate humanity's ability to act with intelligence, respect, and strategic thinking, he could shift the narrative entirely. The aliens expected a display of weakness, but Elias and the Queen could show them something entirely different, that humans were capable of lifting others, not shaming them, and of solving problems that seemed unsolvable. The next public event was designed to test the humans further. The aliens presented a series of complex scenarios meant to expose flaws in Elias' approach. Each scenario was a trap in its own way, filled with subtle rules and hidden consequences. Observers whispered among themselves, certain that the human captain would fail. Elias approached each scenario with calm precision. He observed, analyzed, and acted in ways that the aliens had not anticipated. The Queen provided guidance, offering hints that revealed her deep understanding of interstellar politics and logic. Together, they navigated the challenges smoothly, solving problems not by brute force, but by clever thinking, negotiation, and foresight. The alien commanders grew uneasy. Their plan to humiliate had not succeeded. Instead, they witnessed something unfamiliar, a human leader using empathy, intelligence, and collaboration to achieve results. The Queen, once the symbol of disgrace, began to regain her composure, her dignity quietly restored by Elias' respect and guidance. The shift in perception was subtle but unmistakable. During a brief break in the proceedings, Elias and the Queen spoke privately once more. "Your insights have been invaluable," he said. "I had not expected to find such clarity in one who has been shamed. It is a reminder that perception often clouds judgment." The Queen nodded. "And it is rare for humans to act without ego or fear. You have shown me that there is merit in your species, not in strength but in wisdom." The Queen's contributions became increasingly noticeable, her advice subtly influencing decisions and outcomes. Observers began to murmur, recognizing that the human captain was not only competent but also capable of elevating the Queen's abilities in ways they had not anticipated. As night fell over the alien fleet, Elias returned to the Resolute, reflecting on the day's events. The challenge had been far greater than any military or political engagement he had faced before. He had confronted humiliation, expectation, and rigid traditions, yet had found a way to navigate them without conflict. More importantly, he had begun to demonstrate the unique qualities that made humanity exceptional: the ability to see potential where others saw failure, to act with integrity, and to collaborate with intelligence and respect. In the quiet of his quarters, he considered the Queen's perspective. Exile had stripped her of status in the eyes of her people. but it had not diminished her intellect or her insight. By treating her as an equal, he had allowed her abilities to flourish once more. This realization reinforced his belief that true leadership did not rely on fear or power alone, but on understanding, empathy, and the courage to act morally in complex situations. Ilias knew the next steps would be even more challenging. The alien fleet had already begun to recognize the shift in perception, and not all factions would accept it gracefully. He would need to navigate political tension, subtle manipulation, and cultural differences carefully. But he also understood that with the Queen's guidance, humanity could achieve something remarkable, a demonstration of strength not through domination, but through wisdom and collaboration. He looked out at the stars, thinking of the countless worlds that awaited human exploration and diplomacy. Each star represented a new opportunity to prove humanity's value, to elevate others, and to demonstrate that power could be measured not in conquest, but in insight and respect. The Queen's presence was a reminder that even in the face of humiliation, there was potential for greatness, and that humans had the capacity to see it and nurture it where others could not. As the night deepened, Ilias made a silent vow. He would continue to guide, protect, and collaborate with the Queen, showing the alien fleet and the galaxy that humanity's strength lay not in fear or force, but in its unique ability to lift others, solve complex problems, and act with honor. He was determined to turn what the aliens had intended as a spectacle of shame into a demonstration of human ingenuity, empathy, and moral courage. In the days that followed, small changes began to ripple through the fleet. Alien observers noted subtle improvements in procedure, unexpected solutions to difficult problems, and the quiet influence of the Queen, whose wisdom was now recognized rather than dismissed. Ilias had begun a transformation, one that would not rely on weapons or intimidation, but on the enduring qualities that defined humanity: intelligence, compassion, and the courage to act rightly in the face of expectation. By the end of the second day, it was clear that the aliens had underestimated both the human captain and the exiled Queen. The situation that had been designed to humiliate had instead become a stage for an unexpected display of competence, insight, and moral strength. Ilias had shown that humans were not to be judged by appearances, and the Queen had begun to reclaim her dignity, not through force, but through collaboration and mutual respect. And as the Resolute sailed quietly among the stars, Ilias felt a sense of quiet triumph. The mission was far from complete, but the foundations were set. Humanity's value was being recognized in ways that others had failed to anticipate, and the Queen, once cast aside, was beginning to rise again. Together, they were preparing to challenge not just alien expectations, but the very limits of what humanity could achieve in a galaxy that often measured worth in power and fear. The days passed slowly in the alien fleet, each one a careful dance of observation, strategy, and quiet interaction. Captain Ilias Varen spent every moment learning and teaching, guiding the exiled Queen through the intricate web of alien politics while subtly challenging the assumptions of those who sought to belittle him. The Queen, once resigned to her exile, now approached each day with renewed purpose. With Ilias' guidance, she began to see the potential not just for her own restoration, but for the elevation of those around her, including humanity. One morning, as the alien sun cast long silver beams across the fleet's sleek corridors, Ilias received urgent news from one of the lower-ranking alien officers. A faction within the fleet had begun to stir unrest, quietly undermining the formal ceremonies and whispering doubts about both the Queen and the human captain. Their aim was to create a spectacle of failure, a public display that would humiliate Ilias, the Queen, and by extension, humanity. Ilias understood the gravity of the situation. If the unrest spread, it could turn the fleet against them entirely. Yet he did not panic. He had faced worse odds before, and he knew that careful planning and insight would be the key to turning the tide. He sought the Queen immediately, finding her in the chamber where they had been quietly studying the patterns of alien behavior. Her posture was straight, her eyes alert as she examined holographic displays of the fleet's movements and communications. "They believe they can manipulate perception," Ilias said, "but perception can also be guided toward truth." She looked at him with a faint smile. "You think like a strategist," she said. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I was told." Ilias chuckled softly. "We often surprise even ourselves." The Queen would provide insight into the hidden dynamics of the factions, predicting their moves and suggesting ways to neutralize tension without direct confrontation. It was a delicate balance. One misstep could lead to public embarrassment or outright hostility. Yet Elias remained confident. Humanity had faced impossible challenges before, and the combination of intellect and respect could achieve what others assumed impossible. The first step involved a public demonstration during one of the fleet's regular gatherings. The alien commanders had arranged a scenario meant to expose mistakes in strategy and judgment. Observers expected Elias to falter, to reveal his human limitations. But Elias approached the challenge methodically. He observed every detail, the timing of communications, the subtle signals of the alien factions, and the expected outcomes of each decision. Then he acted, proposing a solution that was not only logical but also elegant in its simplicity. The aliens watched in surprise as the scenario unfolded flawlessly. The Queen's subtle guidance had anticipated potential pitfalls, allowing Elias to steer the events with precision. Whispers rippled through the ranks. No one had expected a human to navigate their intricate systems so effectively, let alone in collaboration with a fallen queen. The result was a quiet but undeniable shift in perception. Observers began to question their assumptions about humanity, noting that intellect, foresight, and respect could rival, or even surpass, the rigid traditions they held dear. During a private moment after the demonstration, the Queen turned to Elias. "You see possibilities where others see only failure," she said. "It is not often that a human can inspire confidence in someone like me, let alone influence a fleet of observers with subtlety." Elias shook his head. "I did not inspire. You inspired. I merely followed your insight. Together, we show what can be achieved when understanding guides action." Her eyes softened, a rare expression of admiration and trust. The next challenge came unexpectedly. A sudden disruption in the fleet's communications had thrown certain operations into confusion. Alien officers were quick to assign blame, some subtly implying that the human captain was responsible for the disorder. Elias observed calmly, analyzing the network of signals, the timing of transmissions, and the interplay between various ship systems. With the Queen's input, he identified the true cause, a minor but overlooked error in automated processes that had propagated through the fleet. He presented the solution publicly, not as a critique of the aliens, but as a constructive observation. The way he framed it allowed the officers to save face while correcting the problem efficiently. The Queen watched closely, impressed by his ability to navigate not just technical issues but the delicate politics of pride, hierarchy, and perception. The alien factions began to murmur among themselves, acknowledging that Elias' approach combined skill, diplomacy, and foresight, a combination that they had rarely seen in a human. As the day wore on, subtle shifts began to emerge. The Queen, once a symbol of disgrace, was increasingly recognized for her knowledge and strategic insight. Elias ensured that her contributions were visible, demonstrating that intelligence and experience could not be ignored, even when they came from someone who had been cast aside. Alien officers who had previously doubted her value began to defer to her judgment in quiet ways, signaling a slow but steady change in perception. Elias noticed these shifts with satisfaction. He had long believed that humanity's strength lay not merely in physical capability or technological advancement, but in the ability to see potential where others saw failure. By treating the Queen as an equal, by demonstrating patience and respect, he had begun to show the fleet what humans could achieve. The effect was subtle but powerful, a lesson in integrity, ingenuity, and moral leadership. That evening, Elias and the Queen met in private again, reviewing the events of the day and planning for the future. "They are beginning to see us differently," Elias noted. "Not just you, but both of us, and through us, humanity itself," the Queen nodded. "Yes, they measure power by control, by fear, but you measure power by understanding. It is a different kind of strength, one that they are not used to seeing." Elias smiled. "And that is why we will succeed. Strength without respect is fragile. Strength with respect endures." The Queen's experience, combined with Elias' human adaptability, allowed them to anticipate challenges and address them before they escalated. The alien commanders, initially confident in their superiority, found themselves increasingly reliant on the human and the fallen Queen to maintain order and efficiency. Through these experiences, the Queen's confidence grew. She began to take initiative, proposing solutions that Elias had not considered, guiding decisions with subtle authority. The aliens could no longer ignore her presence, nor could they dismiss Elia's guidance. Together, they had created a dynamic where respect and intelligence triumphed over fear and tradition. The fleet, once poised to humiliate, was quietly learning that humans, and those they chose to support, operated by principles the aliens had underestimated. One day, as they reviewed a particularly complex challenge involving interfleet coordination, the Queen spoke thoughtfully. "You have shown me that humans are capable of seeing beyond appearances, of valuing potential even when others discard it. I had never believed it possible that my skills could be recognized after exile, yet you make it seem natural." Elias shook his head. "I did not make it seem natural. You made it natural. I simply refused to accept the narrative that others forced upon us." She paused, considering his words. "Then perhaps this is not just about my restoration," she said slowly. "Perhaps it is about a broader truth, that perception can be changed, that value can be recognized where it is overlooked. We show the galaxy that strength is not in domination or intimidation, but in understanding, collaboration, and moral courage." The Queen's eyes shone with newfound clarity. For the first time, she felt that her abilities could not only be acknowledged but amplified, and that through Elia's guidance, she could reclaim influence in ways that would resonate far beyond the fleet. By the end of the week, the subtle changes in perception had become undeniable. Alien factions that had been poised to undermine Elias and the Queen were now observing with cautious respect. The public displays of control and humiliation had been turned into demonstrations of problem-solving, foresight, and ethical leadership. The Queen's influence was growing, her insights increasingly sought after, and humanity's reputation quietly ascending. Elias reflected on the transformation. What the aliens had intended as a spectacle of disgrace had become a testament to the power of intellect, collaboration, and respect. Through patience, strategy, and unwavering adherence to principle, he had begun to shift not only the Queen's fortunes, but also the perception of humanity across the fleet. It was a reminder that true strength was measured not by fear or dominance, but by the ability to elevate others, solve complex problems, and act with integrity. As he gazed out of the observation deck at the distant stars, Elias felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The journey was far from over, but the foundations were secure. The Queen had regained her confidence, the alien factions were reassessing their assumptions, and humanity's potential had been quietly but unmistakably demonstrated. Through intellect, empathy, and foresight, they had turned what was meant to humiliate into an opportunity for growth and recognition. And in that moment, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had witnessed the first hints of humanity's unique approach to leadership, problem-solving, and moral courage. Together with the fallen Queen, he would continue to navigate challenges, confront hidden threats, and demonstrate that true power lay not in fear, but in understanding, collaboration, and the courage to act rightly in the face of expectation. The alien fleet moved silently in orbit, their massive hulls reflecting the light of a distant sun like polished gemstones. Captain Elias Varon stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, his mind alert and focused. The subtle changes in the fleet had not gone unnoticed. Alien factions that once viewed him and the exiled Queen with skepticism were now watching with cautious interest. The Queen herself had grown in confidence and authority, her insights increasingly sought by those who had once dismissed her. Elias knew that the moment for a decisive demonstration of human ingenuity and moral leadership was approaching. The next challenge arrived unexpectedly. A diplomatic dispute had erupted between two alien factions over the control of a critical resource, a network of communications satellites that connected the fleet to their home worlds. The dispute threatened to escalate into chaos, undermining the careful balance Elias and the Queen had been cultivating. Alien officials looked to him, expecting hesitation or error, certain that a human would falter in navigating such a delicate situation. Elias, however, did not falter. He saw opportunity where others saw conflict. He convened a private meeting with the Queen, the two of them standing before a holographic display of the fleet. "This dispute could destabilize everything we have worked for," Elias said, pointing to the shifting positions of the factions. "We must find a solution that respects both sides, demonstrates wisdom, and preserves dignity." The Queen nodded, her eyes sharp with focus. "Then we must act with clarity and foresight. We must anticipate not only their arguments but their perceptions of each other." It was a delicate balance of persuasion and insight, one that relied on patience, perception, and ethical reasoning rather than force. The next day, the fleet gathered in a massive conference chamber, its walls shimmering with alien technology that projected information and status for all to see. The two factions faced each other, their representatives bristling with tension and suspicion. Ilias entered, calm and composed, with the Queen beside him. The alien commanders expected him to stumble, expecting a human to misread the nuances of interstellar diplomacy. Instead, Ilias began with simple questions, guiding each faction to articulate its concerns clearly. He listened attentively, reframing their statements to reveal common ground. The Queen added her insights, noting historical precedents and subtle cultural cues that could influence the outcome. Slowly, the factions began to respond not with hostility, but with consideration. They realized that the path to resolution lay not in domination, but in collaboration. As the discussion progressed, Ilias proposed a plan that allowed both sides to maintain their honor while sharing control of the satellite network. He emphasized mutual benefit, efficiency, and long-term stability, framing the solution as one that elevated the prestige of both factions rather than diminishing it. The Queen supported him, offering strategic guidance and lending her credibility to the proposal. The factions, initially resistant, began to accept the idea, impressed by the careful reasoning and foresight demonstrated by the human captain and the once-fallen Queen. The room fell into a quiet, tense pause as the alien officials considered the proposal. Then one by one they began to nod, acknowledging the logic and fairness of the plan. Whispers of approval spread through the chamber, and for the first time, Ilias noticed genuine admiration in the eyes of the alien observers. The Queen, standing beside him, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Her authority had been recognized not by force or fear, but by intellect, integrity, and moral clarity. After the council adjourned, Ilias and the Queen met privately to review the outcome. "You handled that brilliantly," Ilias said, admiration in his voice. "Not just the factions, but the entire perception of our species." The Queen shook her head. "No, we handled that together. You gave me the opportunity to act, to demonstrate what was possible. You elevated me, and in doing so, humanity has been elevated as well." Ilias smiled. "Sometimes the greatest victories are not in what we achieve alone, but in what we help others achieve." Alien officers who had once doubted her now sought her counsel, and through her, they began to see humans in a new light. Ilias continued to guide her subtly, ensuring that her contributions were recognized without diminishing her authority. Together, they had transformed a symbol of disgrace into a figure of wisdom and strategic insight. The aliens who had intended to humiliate were now learning from her and from humanity alike. One evening, as the fleet drifted through the darkness of space, Ilias and the Queen observed a smaller alien vessel struggling with technical difficulties. Rather than using their position to assert control, Ilias proposed a solution that involved collaboration with the crew, guiding them through adjustments that restored functionality without imposing authority. The Queen assisted, her experience lending credibility and calm to the process. The crew executed the plan efficiently, and the ship's problems were resolved without conflict or humiliation. The effect was profound. Across the fleet, observers began to note the difference between humans and other species. Humans did not dominate through fear or coercion. They guided, assisted, and elevated others. Their approach was subtle yet powerful, demonstrating that true leadership involved understanding, empathy, and ethical reasoning. The Queen, once shunned, had become the embodiment of this principle, her authority amplified by Ilias' respect and recognition. As the days passed, Ilias reflected on the broader implications. Humanity had often been underestimated, judged by appearances and assumed limitations. Yet time and again, humans had demonstrated the ability to innovate, to collaborate, and to uplift others. Through the Queen, he had shown the fleet that value could be recognized even in the face of shame, and that intelligence and respect could achieve outcomes that fear and intimidation never could. The Queen, too, had changed. Her exile, once a source of despair, had become an opportunity for growth and recognition. She had learned to trust in Ilias, to see the potential of humans, and to act with renewed confidence. Together, they had demonstrated a principle that transcended species, that true strength lies not in domination, but in the ability to lift others, to guide without diminishing, and to achieve through collaboration rather than conflict. A pivotal moment arrived when a high-ranking alien commander challenged their approach openly, questioning the validity of using human methods to resolve interfleet disputes. The room was tense. Observers waited to see if Elias would falter. He stepped forward calmly, addressing the concerns directly. "Our goal is stability, efficiency, and fairness," he said. "These principles are universal. They are not confined to any one species. By applying them thoughtfully, we achieve outcomes that honor all parties involved." The council members exchanged glances, the atmosphere shifting from skepticism to cautious admiration. For the first time, Elias saw a tangible acknowledgement that humans could lead not through fear or power, but through intellect, empathy, and principled action. That evening, Elias and the Queen reviewed the day's events. "We have changed perceptions," Elias said quietly. "Not through force, not through intimidation, but by demonstrating what is possible when we act with clarity, respect, and intelligence." The Queen nodded. "Yes, you have shown me that humanity values potential, integrity, and wisdom. And in doing so, you have elevated not just me, but our species in the eyes of this fleet." The fleet, once poised to humiliate, was now observing with respect, acknowledging the unique qualities that humans brought to diplomacy, strategy, and leadership. The following days were filled with continued guidance and collaboration. Elias and the Queen worked on further initiatives that demonstrated human ingenuity, resolving logistical challenges, mediating minor disputes, and improving coordination across the fleet. Each success reinforced the lesson that strength lay in intelligence, integrity, and the capacity to elevate others. Alien officers increasingly deferred to their judgment, recognizing that humans and the Queen were capable of outcomes that were both efficient and honorable. Elias realized that the culmination of these efforts would come in a grand demonstration, a public council where the Queen's restoration and humanity's ingenuity would be fully recognized. The preparation for this event required meticulous planning, subtle persuasion, and unwavering adherence to principle. Elias and the Queen coordinated every detail, ensuring that their actions highlighted wisdom, respect, and the transformative power of collaboration. As the fleet settled into orbit, Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. The journey had been long, challenging, and fraught with subtle dangers, but the progress was undeniable. The Queen had regained her voice, her influence, and her dignity. Humanity had proven that intelligence, empathy, and ethical reasoning could achieve outcomes that force and intimidation never could. And together, they were preparing to demonstrate to the galaxy that true power lies in the ability to lift others, to inspire, and to achieve lasting, honorable change. The stars beyond the fleet shone brightly, a reminder that countless worlds awaited human exploration, guidance, and collaboration. Elias knew that the path ahead would still be filled with challenges, but he also knew that with patience, insight, and unwavering principle, humanity could continue to rise, elevate others, and redefine what it meant to be a force for good in the galaxy. The Queen's journey from exile to authority was nearly complete, and through her, the human race would be seen not as conquerors, but as partners, leaders, and exemplars of integrity and ingenuity. The fleet gathered in its largest chamber, a vast hall of shimmering metal and holographic displays. Every alien officer, diplomat, and observer had been summoned to witness an event unlike any in recent memory. Captain Elias Varen stood beside the exiled Queen, both calm and composed, knowing that this moment would define how humanity and the Queen would be seen across the galaxy. What the aliens had intended as a spectacle of humiliation had instead become a stage for recognition, respect, and the demonstration of true intelligence and leadership. Elias surveyed the room, noting subtle expressions of doubt, curiosity, and growing admiration. The factions that had been poised to challenge him now watched quietly, unsure of how to respond to the display unfolding before them. The Queen, once cast aside and shamed, stood with quiet authority, her presence commanding attention not through fear, but through the clarity of her vision and the weight of her insight. The council began with a ceremonial address from the alien leadership, outlining the past events and acknowledging the human captain who had intervened. Elias listened carefully, allowing the words to set the stage without overshadowing the greater purpose. When it was his turn to speak, he stepped forward, speaking directly and calmly. "I am honored to stand here," he said, Not as a conqueror, not as a judge, but as a representative of humanity's values, intelligence, empathy, and the courage to act rightly. We are here to show that strength is measured not in domination, but in understanding and collaboration. Observers who had doubted humans began to reconsider their assumptions. Elias gestured to the queen, who now stood beside him without restraint. This queen, he continued, has faced exile and shame not for lack of ability, but because of misunderstanding and politics. She has shown wisdom, strategic insight, and moral courage. Through our collaboration, we have achieved solutions that no one species could achieve alone. This demonstrates what is possible when humans see potential and act to elevate it rather than diminish it. I was once cast down, my abilities ignored, and my voice silenced, she said. Yet here, I am recognized not because of my status, but because of the collaboration, respect, and insight extended to me. This human, Captain Elias Varen, has shown that true leadership is not about power over others, but power shared with understanding. Alien observers who had anticipated a display of weakness were now witnessing a demonstration of human ingenuity and moral integrity. The Queen, elevated not by force but by respect and collaboration, had become a symbol not of disgrace, but of wisdom restored. Elias spoke again, guiding the assembly toward a constructive resolution of ongoing tensions. He outlined proposals for continued cooperation between the fleet's factions, highlighting how mutual respect, shared knowledge, and collaboration could prevent conflict and ensure stability. The aliens, impressed by the clarity, logic, and fairness of the proposals, began to acknowledge their value openly. The day's events marked a transformation. The alien factions had shifted from skepticism and derision to acknowledgement and admiration. Observers who had expected human failure were now forced to reconsider not only Elias' abilities, but the broader potential of humanity. The Queen, once shamed and powerless, had been elevated to a position of influence that surpassed what she had held before her exile. In private, after the council had concluded, the Queen turned to Elias. "You have done more than I could have imagined," she said. "You have not only restored my voice and authority, but have demonstrated to these observers the value of humanity in ways I had never believed possible. You have elevated me, yes, but in doing so, you have elevated your species as well." Elias smiled. "Our strength lies not in what we take, but in what we give. When we lift others, we also lift ourselves and those we represent. This is the lesson we have shown today." The Queen, restored in influence and respect, became a key figure in interstellar diplomacy, her strategies and judgment sought across the fleet. The combination of human ingenuity and the Queen's wisdom had created a ripple effect, reshaping perceptions and expectations across multiple civilizations. Elias spent time reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The initial capture of the Queen, meant to humiliate, had become an opportunity to demonstrate the unique qualities that humanity offered. The ability to see potential where others saw failure, to act with intelligence and integrity, and to uplift others to achieve outcomes that no single individual could accomplish alone. It was a lesson not only for the aliens, but for humanity itself. The Queen approached him once more, her expression thoughtful. "In all my years, I have never witnessed leadership like yours," she said. "You have shown that humans can guide, elevate, and inspire without coercion or fear. You have changed the way this fleet, and perhaps this galaxy, perceives your species." Elias nodded. "It is a reminder that the greatest achievements come not from domination, but from understanding, collaboration, and the courage to act rightly even when the path is uncertain." Technical challenges were solved through joint effort, disputes were resolved with diplomacy, and alien officers increasingly deferred to the combined judgment of Elias and the Queen. Their collaboration had become a model for leadership, demonstrating that intelligence, empathy, and respect could achieve far more than brute force or intimidation. Elias observed the fleet with quiet satisfaction. The Queen, once shunned and silenced, now moved confidently through the corridors of power, her influence recognized and respected. Humanity, through patience, insight, and moral courage, had shown its worth in a galaxy that had often underestimated them. The ripple effects of their actions would extend far beyond this single fleet, reshaping perceptions and inspiring others to value collaboration over domination. One evening, as the stars stretched endlessly across the black void, Elias stood with the Queen on the observation deck of the Resolute. "The galaxy is changing," he said softly. "Not through force, not through fear, but through example, insight, and respect. We have shown that humans can elevate others, that intelligence and moral courage can triumph where tradition and power alone fail. The queen nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. And we have shown that exile and shame are not the end. With guidance, respect, and understanding, even the fallen can rise higher than before. Humanity had not only preserved the dignity of the queen, but had demonstrated a principle that transcended species. That true strength lay in uplifting others, in solving problems with wisdom, and in acting with integrity even under scrutiny. It was a victory measured not in conquest or authority, but in the ability to inspire, guide, and elevate. The fleet, once poised to humiliate, had become a testament to the power of understanding, collaboration, and moral leadership. The Queen's restoration was complete. Her wisdom and insight were now recognized across the ships, and humanity's reputation had ascended alongside her. Observers who had doubted or mocked were now learning from them, seeing firsthand the principles that made humans remarkable. Elias reflected on the lessons that would endure long after they departed the fleet. Strength without empathy was fragile. Authority without respect was fleeting. True leadership, demonstrated through collaboration, insight, and moral courage, could transform individuals, civilizations, and entire galaxies. Humanity had proven that it was capable not only of exploration and innovation, but also of elevating others and reshaping perceptions through intelligence and integrity. As the fleet prepared to move onward to new sectors, Elias and the Queen stood together, ready to guide, advise, and inspire. The galaxy, vast and full of unknown worlds, awaited human ingenuity, moral courage, and the unique ability to see potential where others saw only failure. Together, they had turned an attempt at humiliation into a story of elevation, wisdom, and respect, leaving a lasting impression that would be remembered long after the stars had shifted in their courses. The Queen looked at Elias one last time before departure, her voice steady and clear. "You have given me more than my title, more than my station. You have restored my purpose and demonstrated the value of humanity. The galaxy will remember this, and so will I." Elias nodded, a quiet smile crossing his face. "And in doing so, you have reminded us all that true greatness comes from lifting others, from acting rightly, and from using intelligence and empathy to shape a better future." But he also knew that humanity had proven its worth, not through domination, but through understanding, collaboration, and moral courage. The Queen had been elevated beyond all expectation, and through her, humans had demonstrated the rarest of strengths, the ability to inspire, uplift, and achieve greatness by doing what others thought impossible. And in the silent expanse of space, among the countless stars, a message was clear. Humanity's value lay not in power alone, but in the capacity to recognize potential, to act with integrity, and to elevate others higher than they had ever imagined. This was the story of a fallen queen restored, of humanity rising, and of a galaxy learning that true greatness is measured by what we lift, not what we take.